That's www.buildingfortunesradio.com. The short version of the word ideal in Ideal Network stands for I do everything around life, love, liberty, and laughter. And there's much more. Thanks for listening in, and share this with the people that are most important to you. Now on to our show with Darlene Sartore and Peter Mingles. Let's get started.
Hello, everyone. Peter Mingles here. You're listening to us on Building Fortunes Radio. It's www.buildingfortunesradio.com. For anybody that might be unfamiliar with my voice, while you can still hear me, my name is Peter Mingles. We run Building Fortunes Radio. One of the reasons why I built Building Fortunes Radio is I wanted a platform to be able to speak about some of the things that needed to be spoken about. And we're really started off with home-based businesses. I'm an evangelist for home-based businesses. And one of the reasons why is because this way people can help live their life better by design. If you are, if you start to think about it, you want to raise your kids, you want to raise your grandkids or whatever, you want a little bit more control, help with education, all that sort of stuff, I think the best way to do it is get personally involved, and you can do that when you're at home. So we started doing this radio show towards the tail end of 2012, beginning part of 2013, and I really did it because a lot of people inside the industry didn't want to hear some of the things that I had to say. And when I say that, I mean they weren't always positive. It was always, they were always trying to gloss over everything, and I just wanted to speak about some of the things that were going on. Well, I invited Darlene Sartore, who owns the Ideal Network, to be a radio show guest with us. And we do this radio show every Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern. And over the years, you can see as we go through, and Darlene, I think, is going to talk about memory lane a little bit, as we go through some of the things that we've been going through, we realize there has been even more reason for people to be able to have a platform where they can speak their mind. So without being mean, no one ever said you need to be mean. I learned a long time ago the N in SWAN means nice as opposed to nasty. So SWAN stands for be smart, work hard, ambitious, and nice. So you don't have to be nasty about it. You might as well just be nice about it. But if you have a difference of opinion, you might as well be able to have that voice heard. And as a result of all of that, even more reasons why we do Building Fortunes Radio. So I'm going to pass this microphone over to Darlene Sartore on this very interesting day because it's the 46th president who was just inaugurated. The 45th flew back to Florida, or flew down to Florida, which is where I am. And number 46 and 49, 46 is the president, 49 is the VP. It's historic. It is historic, and I'll leave it at that for now. So they're going to get their shot at giving this, running this country or whatever it is, a whirl. Otherwise, we'll see what goes on. And I am putting my head in the sand and going to work. So that's good. So no more distractions. I'm just going to put my head in the sand and go to work. So having said that, Darlene Sartore, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Peter, for keeping sanity. How do we keep cosmic sanity in what we're dealing with? So I do have a great-granddaughter who is very rambunctious this afternoon, and so if you hear her pounding on the window, she is watching what's going on the south side of the house, where I have two dedicated participants with our Intentional Community Project, creating a wonderful-looking area of our south side that has been a trash heap for a while. And I mean a trash heap because that's where we keep all of our wood for the wood burner, and sometimes it gets to be a little bit of a mess out there. And this year the weeds grew up in it. Nobody was maintaining it. So these two dedicated, loyal people out there in the cold are making it look beautiful. So that's what I'm hoping, that we will be able to move forward with what we are dealing with in our world today, and make things look beautiful out of whatever we inherit. I really struggled, let's say it, with today's, what I was going to say, because I do like to stay positive, but positive can be toxic if it's not appropriately maintained. So I decided that today we carried on with what we started yesterday with creating the new outreach community, outreach team and communication team for the USA Republic, that we have been creating for a global example of what Americanism really is all about. The true dynamic of the miracle of America that our founders envisioned. What was their dream? What did they talk about? What did they do? And they had no clue when they were creating the Declaration of Independence and the all of the documents and the things that they were writing down and starting to record for history, where we would be from this starting point of what they were doing. And those who understand history to a certain degree, I can only envision what it was like for George Washington and those loyal troops, those loyal family people that were struggling through that bitter, bitter cold winter with some with not even any shoes. I can only imagine the sacrifices that that generation of people made in order to birth what would become the miracle of America. The miracle of America is really the making of America, but it's a miracle that changed the world. And it really was a 5,000-year leap. And most people don't realize that we have accomplished more in the last couple hundred years than most civilizations have in eons of time. But, you know, we are built on the shoulders of the giants from the last many thousands of years along the way. And that's kind of reason that I started really enjoying reading the Urantia papers, because it talks about things from the Garden of Eden. It talks about the dynamics of other worlds, and it talks about the visions, and it talks about some of the shortcomings. It talks about religions and different cultures and this type of thing. And so it gives us kind of in 196 papers, and it's a little over 2,097 in the book format that they put them in. But in a year's time, you can read through that and you can get a real good synopsis of how it maintains, how to maintain happiness, how to maintain cosmic sanity, that when things kind of go awry and unexpected events happen, you know, is how to address them with grace, elegance, and ease. And just like with Maggie tapping on the window of people outside, she knows to let them know that she sees them working and playing, and she would like to be out there playing with them. But it's just a little bit too cold for a 4-year or a 3.5-year-old to be out there in the cold. So all she can do is enjoy watching them work and pound on the window as she's doing. Maggie, would you please not pound on the window while I am talking on the telephone? Oh, yes. Thank you. So it is about our young people. It is about our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, our great-great-great-grandchildren that we're doing this for. So what we have done is over the last few years, as I began really looking at the shifts that were going to have to be made in my lifestyle, if I desired to pass on to the next generations that which my husband and I started, which my mother and father were a part of in many ways, and my grandparents and my great-grandparents. And I'm just really proud to be a part of the generation of the lineage that comes from America from the early times. My mother's family is a direct lineage of the Ball family, which was George Washington's mother's family, and so you know we have a lot of when you say pride in the fact that we can show our children that we have a responsibility to carry forward the sacrifices that our founding fathers and mothers did back many years ago that helped in doing this 5,000-year leap, this freedoms that we have in America. And one of the things that we have done is we are consolidating. We have made a lot of changes over the last 2 years to consolidate things so that we could be able to bring forth a reality-based progress. And we started the project, we called it many years ago, we called it the Ideal Network Projects. And every year you hear me talk about this dynamic of we go through everything at the end of the year and decide what are we going to carry forward, what earned our trust, what earned our worth of investing our time and resources in for the next year. And it's hard for me to believe that it's already 20 days into the new year of 2021. And one of the things that we decided to do was to rearrange what we call the main house out in the country, which is our Survive and Thrive project. And what do we desire to do to bring forward during 2021 in order to make this much more replicatable for every community to have what we're calling the Survive and Thrive groups. And you've heard me talk about these a little bit in the past. But I've not gone through all of the history. So this year, one of the things that I wanted to, I put on my list as to bringing forward were some of the things that I wrote about in the very beginning of our awakening experience. In 1970 era, that's when my husband and I really began to realize that things were not how do I say this politely? Not what we desired them to be for our family. We started digging into history, and we dug into the Bible. We dug into different areas where we thought we might be able to find some dynamic that we've been there, done that before. What do we do to not repeat the same mistakes over and over again, expect a different result? And you know that's the definition of insanity. So we wanted to find out accuracy. We looked for things that were as authentic as possible. And, you know, history gets rewritten consistently by those who are the winners in the wars or who become the next generation's leaders, the kings, the queens, you know, the bishops, the people that are, quote, unquote, the leaders that become or usurp their way up to power over other people. And you see, that's not the way that we were created as a species. We as human beings need to be and must be self-governors, self-leaders, because we live in a universe that is designed by cause and effect, cause and consequences. It's our choices that we make or accept or reject that make the conditions in which we live. And so as we've gone through this past time of making changes in my personal life and in our family who lives in the country's life, and those who have joined us to live here in the country in southern Indiana, to build this model of what we're calling an ideal survive and thrive community, an intentional community where people are actually working together. Because the one thing we did find that the miracle of America and the making of America on the family-owned and operated businesses, the dynamic where we can learn to build and work together as individuals, putting our pieces of the puzzle into place. And you know, even the teeniest, tiniest piece of the puzzle is value. It's not finished. I'm at the time dealing with and compile such information into an easily assimilated form as possible. My calling is to aid as many people as possible to understand the factors of the particular subject that is affecting their lives, either adversely or beneficially. And that first paragraph in that forward is probably what I still to this day, and I'm looking for exactly when I wrote this. I'm sure I probably dated it somewhere, but I'm not sure exactly when I wrote this, but it probably was in the early 70s. And then followed by that, the next thing that I had to do was America's success formula. I wanted to know what was America's success formula. And so I wrote it from a historical and biblical perspective. And so I wrote that book. And remember, I didn't have any way to print these except this was all typed on a typewriter. There was no way to save anything except in print back then. And so all I have are a few copies that I entrusted to family members. And fortunately, my mother cared enough to keep my copies of everything that I handed to her. God bless her, and thank you, Mom, for being diligent and protecting your daughter's often weird way of doing things, so that I have at least some time for things that were created before 1977 when a fire took our home. Okay? And so that was called America's Success Formula. And then I wrote one that I began to realize that both our education system and our electoral system was very, very flawed. And one of the things that I picked up in that book, and I don't know why I had it written laying there, except it says it's a ticking time bomb. It says there are 47 million Americans relying on government handouts to live. And this was, I guess, I picked this up at the church because it's one of the 4 Patriot books that was advertising their dynamics of their food and the things that they were putting together for saving. And I looked at that, I'm thinking, well, that's exactly what today we were afraid that it was going to be a ticking time bomb. So I'm just glad to say so far so good. We made it through with grace, elegance, and ease as the de facto shifted leadership. And for those who know what I'm talking about, the group of people that are in charge of America today are not a direct lineage of the electoral process. So I wrote a book that was called Elections Without Politics, No Party Promotion System. And I wrote this after I began to realize what George Washington was telling us about the flaws that were happening that he saw during his generation. And I said in the very beginning in the introduction, I said the main flaws in our political system are, 1, how the candidates are nominated. Number 2, the amount of money the candidates are allowed to spend on campaigns. 3, the way elections are run and how votes are counted. Bingo, what are we talking about today? And a bureaucracy that operates outside control of elected representation. Someone on the call today, I kept a live conference call going where anybody could join me we were watching C-SPAN and what was going on. And one of the things that one of the gentlemen said to me, that he didn't have his TV on and et cetera, did Biden have his hand on the Bible, or was the Bible open? And I said, I didn't really pay that much attention. Does anybody know? And somebody said, yeah, it was closed, and we think it was the Catholic Bible. I don't know whether it was or not. So he said to us, well, when you lay your hand on the Bible, you're outside of it, outside the Word. You're outside the authentic. But if it's open and you have your hand on the Bible, you're inside the Word. You're looking for the truth. You're looking for the authentic. And wow, what a story to remember to tell my kids. I never thought of it that way. So that's why it's so important for us to connect with each other to be able to do this. And then in that same folder was what is known as the plan. And I do not know, I have not had time to go and see if this is still online, but this was written by L. Neil Smith, L. period, and then Neil Smith. And I vaguely remember him. We used to have long conversations, and I do not remember exactly. I remember his work anyway. He wrote this, what is known as the problem, the solution, but he created a plan. And I felt I had it with the book that was The Elections Without Politics, and et cetera. And he talks about in there the problem, the solution, and then he talks about taxes, which are really the biggest challenges that we're dealing with, honest money, regulation, justice, trade, rational defense, and the future. And so he was from Fort Collins, Colorado. I met him. He did this process in 2011. I do have the back of it. He says March 2011 is when he printed this up and sent it to me. And it was on a website that was called downwithpower.com/theplan.html. And the words down with power are separated by dashes, DOWN, and then WITH are separated with dashes along with the word power, POWER, has a dash into it. So it's it's down dash with dash power.com. I don't know if it's still online or not. I will be definitely trying to find Smith. I have not talked with Neil in many years, but I met him in Fort Collins, Colorado, on one of our adventures to that neck of the woods to really look at how could we correct the errors that were happening in America and that we felt was taking us into communism rather than not. So what I've heard recently is a term called the communist purge, and that may be what's happening in our dynamic in our world today, is we are finally waking up to the reality that there are some isms that we need to watch out for and eliminate. And so as I'm going through my books and unpacking and putting them up on shelves, I will be bringing together more and more of this. I will immediately have copies made and be locking these up in my safe, so that they will be protected from fire and et cetera if something ever happens again. I don't know anybody else who has a full set of all of my writings, but I'm going to go back through it. And we do need to look at history. Who in your family has collected history that we can save, that's worth saving? Don't let your family pass on without saving the wonderful jewels that they have lived through, and et cetera. And we are past the hour. You have anything you want to say to wrap it up?
No, I love everything that you're always talking about and looking forward to the proactive ways we can take our privacy in our lives under more of our own control. We've always had it, but you probably need to be more diligent than you've ever been before. So I'm kind of interested in see where we're going to take this year collectively on this specific radio show. So having said that, you can catch Darlene Sartore on buildingfortunesradio.com/ideal, buildingfortunesradio.com/ideal. And you had said something during this radio show that was seemingly small, like insignificant, struck something in my mind. And you were talking about whatever period of time it was when people might not have shoes. And it really struck me because I thought about that in a way of, well, what would happen in the event that somebody was lost in the woods and they didn't have shoes? And then what would they do? What could they possibly do? Or what if shoes, for whatever reason just weren't available and you had to go out there and get them? And that simple, fundamental thing that, quite honestly, I don't think about any day other than today, realistically, said, so what would I have to do if I had to become self-sufficient in just a shoe? Or, you can expand upon that, my family have shoes. So it's really making me think about how far back do I need to go to really remember the fundamental rights and prepare myself, my family, my company, my customers, you guys, in any days, regardless of who's president. But I should probably have been thinking about that all the time anyway. So that was just something that you had just said as part of a sentence, but I kind of elaborated a little bit on in my mind and really shifted some of the things that I was thinking about while you were doing your call. So thanks for being here as usual. I'll let you comment on that. Even though we're into bonus time, that's fine. And then we'll wrap it up.
Well, I'm just delighted to hear that something I said sparked some real thoughts, because that's all I really try to do, is try to get us to think about surviving and thriving. Abraham Maslow is one of my favorite pyramids of understanding the dynamics that we always have to stay at the level of survival first. If we do not have the basics of survival, we cannot thrive. And there are people that we often forget about right now in today's world who do not have the necessities in which to live comfortably and healthily. And what I was referring to was George Washington's troops at Valley Forge. And so that's what I was talking about, is thinking about how many people have suffered, how many people during the wars who, the soldiers did not have the basic survival tools and et cetera, and yet they carried on. And they are the ones that we owe our freedoms to, are those who have paid the ultimate price in many ways to be able to know how important liberty and freedom are, how being a self-governor is important, how to not have somebody bossing you around and telling you what you're going to do, or have the power over you to tax you and take your property from you if you can't afford or don't pay the taxes. How much of a slave are you? The difference between us and people in Russia are they are a slave and they know it. We're a slave and we don't know it. That is the key component that woke me up when a Russian lady that came to the United States to speak here at New Harmony told us. And that, key phrases that I remember that my brain keeps saying. So I'm glad I did offer something that made you think about always being at the level of survival.
Perfect. We're going to catch everybody next week. Yep, we're going to catch everybody next week on Building Fortunes Radio. It's www.buildingfortunesradio.com/ideal to be able to hear the previous radio shows, and we'll see you next week.
You've been listening to the Ideal Network Radio Show on buildingfortunesradio.com. Thanks for listening. Be sure to check out the buildingfortunesradio.com website to hear more segments with Darlene Sartore and Peter Mingles. Darlene encourages everyone to join the Ideal Network so you can say, I live the ideal life, where I do everything around life, love, liberty, and laughter. It's been our privilege to have you listen in. Darlene, Peter, and I want to say thanks for listening and ask you to spread the word, tell a friend, join our newsletter, and go make a difference in your world.